Climbing Mount Everest is one of the toughest challenges in the world, and so many people try to do it. But you know, the one thing that they have in common is they all hire Sherpas. They don't try to climb Mount Everest alone because they know they're going to need help. So let's equate that to aging. We know we're going to need help as we age, but why do so many people try to do it by themselves? If you're new here, hi, I'm Vicki. Let's talk about why aging safely doesn't mean that you need to age alone, and that having your aging Sherpas around you is going to set you up to be able to live the life that you want to live on your terms until the end of your life. So why do so many people think that they can age alone? Some of it is pride. Some of it is the generation in which they grew up, and my in-laws and my grandfather, they grew up in the silent generation, and that basically is the definition of resilience. They did everything. They were fought in multiple wars. They lived through the Great Depression. They had to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they didn't ask for help a lot because their friends, their family, their neighbors were all in the same boat as they were in. So they're used to going it alone, and they're not used to asking for help. The other thing is they feel like they're being a burden on their family members, and they don't want to be a burden. I'll put a link to this video where I talk about my in-laws needing 22 light bulbs, and my father-in-law was afraid to climb a ladder, but he didn't want to burden my husband by asking him to change a light bulb. And you know what? Asking to change one light bulb here and there wouldn't have been a burden, but having to run to Home Depot in the middle of the night to try to find 22 light bulbs, oh, that was a burden. But we would never let him see that. We had to go out and get those lights. But I think that mentality of I have to do it by myself, or they will think that I can't take care of myself and lock me up, also came into play with my in-laws, because when they grew up, that's how people with mental disabilities were dealt with. And mental disabilities included medical disabilities. So dementia, physical incapabilities, not being able to walk, all those things were kind of treated with just locking people up into state hospitals. And so they have those vivid memories of that. And as dementia kicks in, that's where your memories go. You don't remember the short term, all the advances that you've recently seen. You remember all the horror stories from the past because those are what's stuck in your long-term memory. And we had to combat that with them, and we had to work with them on that. And we basically had to force our way into helping them age with us and letting us help them versus them doing it alone, which they did almost up until the end because they were able to push us away. But the reality is that aging, like everything in life, it's a team effort. I know a lot of people say that they've lived their life completely all on their own, but in reality, you didn't. You were born, your mom had to give birth to you, depending on where they were. Somebody, a doctor, a hospital, a midwife, somebody helped to deliver. You went to school, teachers helped you. You got a job, somebody hopefully trained you. But everything that we do in life, we don't do it by ourselves. Yet when we start to get older, and we need the help, we push people away because we got this. And I'm sorry, I need to put that on a shirt because I heard that so much and we knew that they didn't have it. But just like with climbing Mount Everest, the most experienced climbers know that they can't make it on their own. They need the Sherpas to help guide and to help haul, and the pack animals to get things up to the next level on the summit, and all the different stops they have to make. They know they can't do that by themselves. They know the dire consequences of trying to go it alone. And we also know the dire consequences of trying to age alone, yet we still try to do it. And that's why I really want you to start thinking about it more into mindset of, I'm not weak. I'm not a burden. I don't got this. And because I asked for help, it doesn't make me less than. It doesn't make me a burden. It actually makes me stronger because I asked for help before it got dire. So we need to start building our Sherpa team, and especially if you're aging alone. And when I say aging alone, I don't mean a single person. Even older couples, you're technically aging alone because, as I prove with my in-laws, my father-in-law thought he was aging with his wife. She had lost the ability to think logically and let him lie on the floor. She did not think to ask for help. And when I called that very next day and started talking to her, she still did not tell me he needed help. It wasn't until I started asking how he was and if he wanted something from the store that she finally mentioned that he was on the floor. So if I hadn't kept probing and took her for face value and didn't go over there for another 24 to 48 hours, this is not the story that I would be telling you. I wouldn't be telling you that Phil went to the hospital and we had to scramble to get the house ready to bring him back home. I would have been telling you the story of we buried him and then we had to put mom in assisted living, probably. So you don't want to get that way. You want to make sure you've got people around you so that when you get to that point, you've got someone like me who's calling, who's asking questions, who's coming over. And even though I missed a couple of signs, at least this was better than aging alone and we were able to still get help in time. You don't want to get in a situation where you can't get help in time, which is why I told the story of how what happened to Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy almost happened to my in-laws. But if I hadn't kept prying, it definitely would have happened. So if you're aging alone, you want to start building those connections, friends, family. If you don't have kids, maybe you have nieces, nephews, cousins, somewhere there. If not, speak with a lawyer. There are organizations out there that can also help. One of the best things for us too was also before this whole thing started, where we had to take over, we could see that there were signs. And so we sent Meals on Wheels. We gave it to them as a gift. Well, they'll never turn down a gift. If I ask them they want Meals on Wheels, they'll tell me, heck no. But if I give it to them for Christmas, wrapped up in a bow, they'll take it. And Meals on Wheels was snitching on them or calling me, I went over today and they didn't answer the door, or things like that. So there are things that you can do in order to surround yourself with people. There, church organizations, talk to your doctor's office. Let me rephrase that. Don't talk to your doctor. Sometimes the doctors don't know anything. Talk to the people behind the desk in the doctor's office. They can hook you up with the social worker or the programs director and look for programs of ways that you can surround yourself with your aging Sherpas, because you're going to need them just like people who climb Mount Everest. If you made it this far with me, thanks so much for watching. And remember, even the best climbers don't climb alone. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do that so I can ensure that I see you in the next video when we talk about how you want to insure your future like you insure your car.